Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, and in this RedGamingTech.com video, how are ya? um, this has been a bit of an interesting week for me, actually. And it all started when a few sources started to reach out to me for RDNA 2 information. So if you're familiar with my videos over the past few days, you'll know that I've leaked several pretty big things for RDNA 2. And as the days have rolled on, I'm growing more confident in the information that I have leaked. But further to this, I was also given several photos for the RX 6900 XT, which, I was asked basically to not share with anyone. However, since that event, one of the photos seems to have got into Jay's 2 cents. And so, because of this, my source is now basically given permission to reveal most of the photos that I have been sent. There are still some for a few things I'm not allowed to show, some of the photos I'm not allowed to show, and also I'm still being asked to hold back some information. But with that said, I'm really excited to be able to show these photos to you finally, so let's just actually take a look, shall we? Okay, so let's take a look at a couple of these photos. I'm still being asked to not show all of the photos, unfortunately, that I have, and I'm also, unfortunately, still being asked to hold back certain details of the GPU, but we can certainly have a good understanding now of how this card looks. So, the first photo is the one that Jay shared, at least to my knowledge, and I really like the aesthetic of this thing. I will be interested to see what the options are in terms of RGB on the Radeon logo. Again, we can see two 8-pin power connectors. I'm hearing that the card is up to 300 watts. It's obviously a triple fan solution here. And I really like it. It looks a little bit like some of the MSI cards from the RTX 20 line. By the way, if you can hear some drilling in the background, I really apologise. Unfortunately, my neighbours today are picking the day to do renovations to their roof, and there's not too much I could do about it. To be totally honest, because later on is going to be the PlayStation event, so I'm just kind of doing the best I can. I actually really like the design of the GPU. I like the little accents on the fan themselves. I think that the card looks pretty cool in this photo. But we have others, so I don't want to spend too long on that. So the next one is a photo of the rear of the card. Here, again, you can see the two 8-pin power connectors, which are present on the GPU, as well as the actual backplate itself, and you can see kind of an equals R sign on it. On the rear of the card, obviously, there is also the screws for the backplate itself. Unfortunately, I don't have any of the bare PCB here, which is somewhat unfortunate, but again, I really like the aesthetic. I think that the colour scheme really works for this GPU. I'll be curious to see what third-party AIBs are capable of. Just as a quick reminder, if you missed my previous video, one thing I'm hearing is that although the GPUs hit 300 watts, obviously with the two 8-pins, they can actually consume way more than that. So apparently some of this is down to AIBs and also user overclocking. So I don't know how much of a headroom there is with overclocking. Obviously, I don't have one of the cards on my desk to test, but if that's true, I would be curious to see how well it scales in terms of power consumption and higher clock frequencies, because obviously at the end of the day, that is going to be a very important part of how well the GPU scales. We also have yet another photo of this card, and I think this one's nicer because of depth. You can kind of get an idea of how actually deep this card is. It's not a thin card. It's not going to fit in a single slot. But again, I suspect that this is not just a case of the GPU, or the cooler rather, needing to vent the actual heat from the card in terms of the noise levels, but also because of how high the clock frequencies for these GPUs, at least what I'm hearing anyway, boosts. Again, I'll talk more about this in a moment, but again, I'm hearing that the GPUs can hit over the clock frequency of the PlayStation 5, or at least around that clock frequency. So you can clearly see that temperature is probably going to be incredibly important in keeping these things cool. I actually really like the overall aesthetic of the GPU. I think that it's definitely a rather pretty looking card, at least in my personal opinion. And the final photo that we'll look at is one showing the I/O. Again, this is unsurprising because we already kind of saw the render showing the I/O of the GPU, but you can see the display ports, the HDMI, and finally the USB connector on the GPU. Other than that, you'll notice that the backplate, assuming this design is final, the backplate itself is completely and utterly blocked off. So it seems like the heat just goes straight up through the card, and the purpose of this particular backplate is, well, just for obviously A, holding it, and B, for I/O, so there's no air pass through at all. Again, I really like the look of the GPU. I think it looks really nice, but there is another thing that we kind of need to go through as well, and that is a render of the 6700. I'm pretty certain that the dual fan design here is the 6700. I'm not 100% on that though, because my source is being a bit cagey on this. I do believe that the design is not final yet for this card, so it's possible that the colour scheme could end up being purple and pink for all we know at the end, but this is what we're seeing so far, and again, I believe it's the 6700. The only thing I have to question that though is you will also notice the power connectors at the top of the GPU. So now that we've taken a look at the photos, we're going to mosey our way to Rogueme and some discoveries he's made with the free desktop website. These are primarily PCID related, but there are some interesting discoveries here, plus some information as well on what RDNA 2 will be supporting, including new video codecs. So we'll have a quick look at that and then we'll round things off. Now let's move over to some stuff from Rogueme / leaks in general. It is almost positive at this point, thanks to free desktop, and this is via videocards.com, that RDNA 2 does get AV1 decoding. This is obviously quite important as it's a new standard. Tiger Lake / Intel's Xe GPUs will also support this. The RTX 30 series also supports this, and Microsoft too are going to obviously be pushing this quite heftily. AV1, for those who don't know, it's a new royalty-free video encoding format. It's up to 50% more efficient in terms of bitrate anyway than H.264, so it will be a competitor to the HVEC standard. Obviously, at the end of the day, support for this is great. It may not necessarily affect everyone right now, but who knows in the future. Furthermore, we now have some leaks thanks to Rogueme as well. What we don't know 100% at this point is what the actual differences are between Sienna Cichlid and Nave 21, which again is the RX 6000 series. The photos we saw, just as a reminder, are the 6900 XT. So Sienna Cichlid seems to have references to HBM2, but I am 100%, not 100, but I'm 99% positive that the gaming variants of these GPUs do not have HBM2. Again, I'm hearing it's just GDDR6. However, as I did cover recently in an exclusive, I do believe that there are going to be variants of the Nave 21 Silicon, which is probably going to be the variants that are being discussed here with the PCIe IDs that Rogueme is discovering, which do feature HBM2. This appears to be for prosumer lineup. And again, just a reminder from that video, I also am hearing that the MI100 GPUs, which is going to be perhaps better known to some as Arcturus, those will also possibly have prosumer variants as well, which is super duper weird given the fact that they don't even have display blocks. I would encourage you, if you've not checked out my previous couple of exclusives, to actually take a look at those, because obviously there's a ton of information there on a lot of the characteristics of the second generation of RDNA 2, a lot of insight into possibly the architecture. As a quick reminder though, we're looking at up to 80 compute units. There are going to be lower end SKUs which will have, for example, 64 compute units and so on and so on, but I'm just going to focus for a moment on the high end. It's allegedly a 256-bit memory interface with up to 128 megabytes of what AMD seems to be dubbing as Infinity Cache. Now, the thing I'm not sure about on the Infinity Cache, because I've had someone else reach out to me, is I'm not sure whether the 128 megabytes is separate to the GPU cache. As an example, and it's not accurate exactly, but it's an easy example, is it like, for example, the Xbox One and its ESRAM, where the 32 megabytes was kind of separate and not included on like the CPU caches and stuff like that? Or is it all of the GPU cache together equals 128 megs? One source insists that it's separate, and another source, which is always helpful, insists that it is together. So again, I don't know which it is. One source, and this is not a verbatim quote, but they said along the lines of adding 128 megabytes additional cache to the die makes sense, but someone else is refuting that, so I'm not sure which it is. So I'm just throwing that out there. As for the clock frequency, I am hearing that the GPU can clock really to the stratosphere, 2200 megahertz or above. They are saying it's PS5-like. Originally I was hearing console-like, which isn't very useful because the Xbox is 1800-ish and the PlayStation's like 2200-ish, which, again, that's like a massive gulf. You might as well say, like, here to Australia, and if you're trying to narrow down distance, it's just pointless. So it's like, if it's PS5 speed, that's very interesting, given what we're learning about the overclockability. And again, I've said this multiple times now, but I was led to believe that there was a hard limit at just above the PlayStation 5 speed, let's say 2300 megahertz, because of intra-CU buses on the GPU. Maybe this is not applicable to the desktop, but how it was explained to me, it's not a thing for the PS5, it's a thing not even for the silicon, it's a thing for the actual architecture. It's an architectural limit. Again, we can just wait and see on that one. Who knows? It's going to be very interesting, though, if this is true, because if it is 2200 megahertz, for example, this would make sense given the information we're learning about the caches, because obviously faster clock frequencies is obviously beneficial to caches, to put it mildly. But I think that's just about it for this particular video. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Normal stuff. Share, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.